You're listening to The Ride to Work with Pastor Fred. Fuel for your faith before you clock in. Enjoy the ride.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us again today for The Ride to Work. Today is Wednesday, and this is part 2 of the episode that we started upon yesterday in the week's series, The Secret is Out. That's the title of this week's series, The Secret is Out. And yesterday, we dealt with the secret that stole my voice, things or trauma that you've buried and it remained hidden, but you've not yet really committed yourself to being healed from. And that trauma, that situation, that um, people not really, I guess, in a sense, want to say, uh, understanding where you're coming from or even believing the things that happen to you. And it caused you to go silent. It caused your voice to be silent. It caused you not to want to speak out. So we were dealing with the character Tamar and her story that's found in 2 Samuel, the 13th chapter. Start at the first verse and just read on down until the story ends. But family, I mean, to be honest, I want to, matter of fact, can I just tell you something that may be difficult to hear? We'll just start like that. Just because something happened years ago doesn't mean it stayed years ago. And I say that because I realized just through own personal experience that pain has a way of traveling. It has a way of going places, and it travels into relationships, into our relationships. It travels into the way we may parent. It travels into friendships or the friends that we choose to be around or allow to be around us. It travels into even our worship. And I've learned that people that have been wounded, people that have been hurt severely, they don't always know that they are. They don't really always acknowledge or recognize that you're hurt. You're hurt. See, sometimes they just simply think this is just who I am. This is just who I am. But what if it isn't? What if what you call your personality is really your pain? What if it's your anger? What about your distrust? Uh, you need to control your fear of abandonment, your inability to receive love isn't your identity at all? Huh? What if it's not that? What if that's not who you are? What if it's just simply pain or a wound that just remain untreated? What if it's that? You see, because this brings us to our second point. I told you upon yesterday that was part 1 of the secret that stole my voice. We're going to now continue into part 2. And I just need to go ahead and walk through this because we've been walking very heavily for the past 2 days. Now we're on day 3. And let me say this. Unhealed pain doesn't stay in the past. It doesn't. You may want it to, you may wish it to, but it does not stay in the past. What it does is it negotiates your future quietly. That's what it does. So we talked about yesterday the secret that stole my voice. And the second point that I want to make in that is that the secret that shaped me. The secret that shaped you, because one of the saddest realities about trauma, listen, is that it rarely remains confined to the moment that it happened. It rarely stays there. It begins shaping things. It begins shaping how you think, how you love, how you trust, how you respond. And see, when we were dealing with Tamar, and for her, the Bible said that she remained in her brother Absalom's house, desolate. Think about that word, because that word is powerful. It doesn't simply describe where she lived. It described what she felt. She was alive, but she was emotionally disconnected. She was breathing, yes, but very severely broken. Existing, but not really living. And see, isn't it amazing? I'll say this: how someone can survive an event, they can survive major trauma, but lose pieces of themselves afterwards. Hmm? Because you have to think about it. Some people lost their laughter. I don't know who I'm talking to out there. So it may be one of you writers this morning. You lost your laughter. Other people may have lost their confidence, lost their innocence. Some people lost their ability to trust. And the event ended. Yes, the trauma, the situation, whatever it was that happened, it ended, but its influence didn't. It carried on. It carried on. And what I'd like you to understand as we go through this is, listen, pain, pain changes your perspective. It does. When you deal with trauma, it changes how you see the world. It does. It shapes you. You stop expecting kindness. You don't expect people to be nice. And if they do, you don't trust it. You become suspicious when people compliment you. Uh, I know I'm talking to somebody out there. You question real love, real genuine love. Somebody genuinely loves you, but you question it. You question it. You sit and you wait for people to disappoint you. And it's not because you're a negative person. That's not it. It's because disappointment has become familiar to you. You recognize it. You relate to it. It's like driving after your windshield has been cracked. The world is still there, but you can't see it clearly anymore. It's still there though. You're not looking through life. You're literally looking through pain. That's what you're doing. You're looking through pain. And pain changes your perspective, but it also changes your patterns. I know I know I'm walking. I'm walking. I'm walking in somebody's yard. I know I am. Pain changes your patterns. Have you ever listen? Have you ever noticed how people often repeat what they hated? And they tell themselves, "I'm never gonna be that. I'm not gonna be that. That happened to me. I would never be that way." But what happened? They repeat what they hated, and it's not because they wanted to. It's just pain created a pattern. It created a pattern. Look, somebody who grew up abandoned, they'll cling to unhealthy relationships because they're terrified of being left again. So they'll cling to it. You have to understand the core and the root of some of these behaviors in the aftermath of trauma. Uh, Somebody constantly criticized, or was constantly criticized, should I say? And what happens is they become defensive before anybody even says anything. Before anybody says a word, they're on the defense. Think about it. I mean, you may know somebody like that. Somebody was repeatedly being betrayed, repeatedly. And what happens, the end result of that is they push good people away before they have a chance to even stay and show how genuine they are. Basically, the pain begins or the wound begins making decisions for you. And the scary part of that is It's like I said in the beginning. Some of you don't even realize that that's what's happening. You don't even realize it. Pain changes your patterns. It does. Pain also changes, and this is one that's very severe. And I hope there's somebody out there that really, uh, at some point, you make the transition. You're convicted of what I'm about to say, and you make the effort to transition from this way of thinking, because pain changes your perception of yourself. It does. This is where the enemy does its greatest work. The trauma says, I'm damaged. I'm damaged. I'm unworthy. I'm too broken. I'm too much. I'll never be normal. But you got to understand and notice that those aren't God's words. Those aren't God's words. It's not. Hmm? That's your wound echoing. That's what's happening. Those are echoes of your pain. God never called you what your pain called you. He never called you that. People may have labeled you, yeah. Experiences you feel may have labeled you, yeah, but God calls you by your purpose, not your pain. And if we want to go even deeper, yeah, because we may as well. We already walking in there. Look, I shared this, I think, upon yesterday, because one of the things that truly breaks my heart about Tamar's story is that she didn't lose her value. She didn't lose her value. She lost her ability to believe she still had value. That's what happened. There's a difference in that. Mm? Her trauma, her assault, her rape. If we just go ahead and put it out there like that. Huh? That situation, that moment never changed who she was. It just changed how she saw herself. And that's what trauma does. It often does that. It convinces us that what happened to us has become us. That's what it does. That's what it does. God never introduces his children by their wounds. God don't do that. Think about it. Think about it. Jesus didn't call people the blind man, the leper, the woman with the issue. He didn't call them that. He restored them. He restored them. God, look, he refuses to let brokenness become your permanent introduction. No, no, that's not who you are. That's not who you are. And let me just give you the secret behind the secret. Let's go a little deeper. Because there's a secret behind the secret, and that's that, listen, most people aren't hiding the event anymore. They're not hiding what happened anymore. They're hiding the effects of it. That's what they're doing. They're hiding how hard it is to trust. They're hiding how difficult it is to receive love and believe it. Hmm? That's what they're doing. They're how exhausting it is to always feel like they have to prove themselves. They're hiding panic attacks and bad dreams, nightmares. They're hiding triggers. They're hiding what's the word? Hyper vigilance. Uh, they're hiding that kind of stuff. They're hiding the fear that if someone gets too close, they'll leave, or worse, they'll discover who you think you really are. Come on, man. I can't share that with you because then your mind will start thinking, your perception of me will change if I tell you what I've been through. But I thank God for those that are bold enough to know what they've been through is not who they are now. Uh, my pain may have built me, but it didn't break me. And it sure as hell don't define me. It doesn't. And that's what they fear. Fear things like that. That people will discover who you think. Notice I said who they think they really are. Because that's a lie of the enemy. You are not what you've been through. Mm? But healing begins. Healing begins because that's what we're talking about. Healing begins when you stop asking, how can I keep this hidden? How can I hide this? Stop asking that and start asking, how can God heal this? And can I be a little transparent, a lot more transparent? Some of you, and I'll say it like this, some of you have apologized for things that you never even did. You carry guilt that never even belonged to you. Wasn't your fault. Huh? You've accepted blame because it was easier than facing rejection. You did that. You spent years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. We've become people pleasers. Because somewhere along the way you believed acceptance had to be earned. Listen, writers, listen. Family, can I call you family? Listen, that's exhausting. That's just tiring. God never asked you to perform for his love. He loved you before your performance. Do you hear what I'm saying? And if you're always trying to prove your worth, maybe it's because someone made you question your worth. But hear me today. Hear me today. Your worth was never determined by the people who hurt you. It was determined by God who created you. That's what it was. That's what your worth was. That's how it was determined. I remember I was reading where some psychologists, let me make sure I get this right, they had conducted an experiment with elephants. Yeah, elephants, that's right. And see, and when they were young, the elephants, they were tied to heavy chains. And no matter how hard they pulled, they couldn't break the chains. They couldn't break free, and eventually they stopped trying. Now those same baby elephants, they grew, and as adults, the same ones they could be restrained with nothing more than a small rope. And it's not because the rope was stronger; it's because the memory was. Mm, the memory was. And how many of you are living like that right now? You free enough to move, huh? But yet you've convinced yourself to still be bound, still be tied to that past, to that trauma, to that pain. And it's not because God hadn't released you, it's because your mind still believes yesterday has authority over your today. And it does not. It does not. The greatest prison is not always the one around you, it's the one trauma that builds inside of you. So listen, tomorrow isn't promised. It's not. And I'm going to stop right there. But healing is possible. It's possible. And we'll deal with that tomorrow. But in the meantime, just know your value was not determined by who hurt you or how they hurt you. God gave you your value way before any trauma ever hit your life. And it does not change. It did not change because something happened to you. We'll be writing again tomorrow. I love you. God loves you more. Be blessed.